Let's dial it back to the year 1968 real quick. January 1st, the start of the year, sees the start of Ashita no Joe's serialization. Ashita no Joe is a very famous and very influential manga. Even if you haven't read it or watched the anime adaptation at all, you've probably done so with something Ashita no Joe in some way inspired or influenced. This isn't isolated to just the realm of boxing manga or anime or the sports genre, but manga and anime as a whole. It's pretty damn likely that you've seen at least one reference to Ashita no Joe somewhere. But I'm not really going to be talking about Ashita no Joe in this video. Partly because it's really not required reading for this, and partly because I still need to finish it myself. What the hell am I doing making this video, or really any video on anime or manga at all, without studying up on Joe Yabuki? I know, I deserve to be crucified. If, in a year from now, I can't say I've read or watched Ashita no Joe, actually commit to my crucifixion for real, because by then I deserve it. No really, I'm serious about that. Capital punishment aside, I'm not talking about Ashita no Joe right now. 50 years after its serialization began came along a 50th anniversary project, Megalobox. Megalobox is a reimagining of Ashita no Joe. This is why I said you really don't need to be the most familiar with the source material since Megalobox doesn't require that at all. Megalobox of course borrows a lot of its elements and basic premise from Ashita no Joe, but goes on to tell its own story and end up having an identity of its own. And when I first heard of Megalobox and saw both boxing and mecha, I was hooked right then and there. I was so down to see what Megalobox had to offer. Thank you to my supporters. If you would like to support me on the channel, you can do so on Patreon, link on screen and in the description. If you do, you'll be thanked in the videos, be able to watch each video a week early, as well as gain access to bonus videos. Megalobox is set in a near cyberpunk future. I would say this shit has an exaggerated class divide going on, but honestly it's about on par with reality. You got the much cleaner upper class district and the run-down shithole that is where the story starts. But this is a Japanese interpretation of a shithole. You ever look at any video of literally anywhere in Japan and notice how clean their streets are? Damn, I wish it was like that where I lived. So we get a shot of a dump-ass bar called the Drunk Monk. Shithole checklist. You got graffiti. Check. The building is kinda in disrepair. Checks out. But I just don't buy it. These streets are too clean. Where the fuck are the 10 dirty ass mattresses, piles of littered trash, the fucking broken glass caking the street? I'm not seeing a single empty Modelo or crackhead on the side of the street. This setting is too clean. Needs more trash. And I'm talking from experience here. I took all those fucking pictures. It's disgusting. In the Drunk Monk is an underground Megalobox fighting ring where illegal matches are had and bets are placed. Megaloboxing is very easy to grasp. Take a boxer and strap a mechanical exoskeleton to their arms called gear. Pretty fucking simple, not that different from regular boxing. Back in 2018, before the show aired, I saw the trailer for this shit and was fucking in. Megalobox combines my love of hype-ass action anime and mecha. Man, I love it. I don't understand who doesn't at least appreciate mecha. It's always filled with the coolest designs ever. Megaloboxing is the hottest shit in this world, with Megalonia, the biggest tournament for the sport, having just been announced to be a couple months away. And this is where we find Junk Dog, an illegal Megaloboxer scraping by in life by throwing matches with his partner, Gansaku Nanbu. Junk Dog is like, man, this is some bullshit. He knows he's better than this scene. And he absolutely is, having the skills to back it up. Not only able to make a rigged fight look real, but to also absolutely crush his opponent if he really wanted to. He wants to push himself to greater heights, but is tied down as a mafia dog, throwing match after match. So he says fuck it, and he and Nanbu come up with an escape plan. They're going to enter the Megalonia tournament, fight their way into Megalonia, and maybe even try to win it. To do this, Junk Dog gets the new identity of Joe and receives support by both Nanbu and a local orphan named Sachio, who turns out to be cracked with Megaloboxing knowledge. Megalobox is very much a found family story. It's a group of societal rejects banding together and fighting to carve their own place in the world. It's very life-affirming to see these characters support and rely on each other as they somehow beat the odds despite all the obstacles and opposition in front of them. When even the dregs and wild dogs of society can take their futures in their own hands and make something better out of it. It's always an empowering thing to watch. The main cast are meant to be analogs of the cast of Ashita no Joe. Joe and Joe is pretty obvious. Then you got Sachio and Sachi. There's Nanbu and Danpei, both blind in one eye, lover of booze. I'm sure you can see the resemblance. Speaking of resemblance, Yukiko Shirato and Yoko Shiraki might as well be the same character design. And I'm pretty sure Rikishi's analog is supposed to be Yuri here. Although, are we sure he should be called Yuri and not Yaoi? Despite the characters in Megalobox being modeled after those in Ashita no Joe, they are their own characters. They are their own people who end up walking their own paths. In an interview with Yo Moriyama in the Megalobox Bios and Bouts booklet, this is how he talks about Joe while in the process of creating him. This story uses tomorrow's Joe as a base, but of course our Joe isn't Joe Yabuki. He eventually grows to be someone like Joe Yabuki, but in the beginning he appears with many doubts and frustrations. Despite the same name and even being modeled after him, the two are their own unique characters, and this extends to the rest of the cast as well as Megalobox as a whole. This is why I said familiarity with Ashita no Joe isn't required. While I'm sure having that familiarity would probably give you a greater appreciation for Megalobox in the end, you don't need it to engage with and enjoy the show. But wow, would you believe it? Actual characters with more melanin than not at all? And they're the leading characters? I swear this shit is super rare to see. In the entire landscape that is anime and manga, think about how many of those have dark-skinned main characters that you can think of. No really, actually try this. It's not as easy as you think. There's like Casca and Guts depending on who you ask. Starting off, there's already a fucking asterisk on that example. There's Carol from Carol and Tuesday, fucking Victor Freeman from Blaster Knuckle. It's not at all common to see, and it makes Megalobox stand the fuck out as being one of the very few like this. That's not the only reason Megalobox stands out visually. Megalobox's art direction intentionally is made to look much older, as if the show is being animated on cells or being watched on a CRT. Shit's a little bit blurred, especially the backgrounds. You ever go back to the pre-digital era of animation and see objects that clearly are drawn on a different layer than the background and are way more in focus? There's some of that going on. And the line art isn't solid. It's broken up and imperfect as if it was drawn by hand and not done digitally. It's very refreshing to watch something that is visually going for something different and interesting. Watch enough anime and everything starts to blend into each other and it can be tiring. Also makes it harder to even differentiate or remember them. Makes me really appreciate different art styles like what Megalobox is going for. And while Megalobox isn't doing something as exaggerated and unique as something like Ping Pong the Animation with its art, Megalobox is still at least more visually engaging and memorable than your seasonal slop. Megalobox is at least in part about boxing. It's in the fucking title, it'd be pretty crazy for it to not have anything to do with boxing at all. The boxing is fine. It's not bad by any means. There's some really hype moments that happen occasionally with some really sick animation. The fucking stopped uppercut with a shockwave is some good shit. The movement is slick and weighty, cum-worthy. Whereas something like Hajime no Ippo really steps up its animation game with its fights and takes its time to delve into the boxing techniques and the psychology of the fighters both in and out the ring, Megalobox is a lot less concerned with that. Megalobox touches on the subjects a bit, but doesn't go as balls deep as Ippo does. Megalobox is way more concerned with its narrative and its themes. Megalobox actually has a very straightforward and simple underdog story. If you've seen an underdog story before, then you're probably familiar with the structure to this. But simple isn't necessarily a bad thing. Not everything has to be a super complex narrative, it just has to be effective in telling its story. Megalobox set out with that goal of an uplifting story about beating the odds, and I'd say it achieved its goals. We've got our underdog, Joe, but he's actually super cracked at Megaloboxing and could go toe-to-toe with the best of them. But if he's that good, what makes him a good underdog? That is extreme disadvantage. If we know that on equal footing Joe can easily dance with the best of them, then we need that shit to be as unequal as possible. I honestly find it really funny as to the setup of this. They just fuck up and have their gear burned down. Nothing major. They can sometimes be a group of bumblefucks. But then they turn around and say, wait a minute, we can market the shit out of not needing a gear. I remember back when Megalobox was airing and I was watching it weekly that I started to hear some complaints about this part of the show. I don't think I'd be able to find the exact complaints I'm talking about, but they basically said, I came here to see mecha boxing. Why'd you take the gear away? This is fucking trash now. And to that I say, they missed the fucking point of the show. Megalobox is about two major themes and messages. The first is fighting for a better tomorrow, and the second is about being the real fucking deal. Both of these themes are embodied by the characters that Joe ends up fighting. Take Aragaki. When the man first comes into the story, he was not a man that lives for the future. He lived in the past, haunted by memories and exclusively fueled by it. No ambition, just revenge for his past self. I like Aragaki a lot for his role in the story and the part he plays. I'm also not alone here, as Yo Moriyama feels the same about him. In that same interview from earlier, we made Aragaki someone who could have been a protagonist. He's like the flip side of the hero where, depending on the turn of events, Joe could have ended up like Aragaki, and Aragaki could have ended up like Joe. The two characters are actually very similar in where they begin in the story, but whereas Aragaki tunnel visions the past, the major reason why Joe doesn't end up going along the same path is because he has those ambitions and dreams for a brighter tomorrow that he's willing to risk everything for. Man, it sure is a good thing that Joe doesn't end up like that. That surely is foreshadowing for a fucking fantastic second season. Much like how Aragaki is the embodiment of that theme, the later fight with Mikio is the embodiment of the second, of actually putting in the work and self-improvement. And this is what I feel people didn't quite see by being blinded by the cool mecha arms. Mikio is just a tech bro. He ain't shit, he ain't the real deal. He basically bought his way to the top by having his gear think for himself. And Mikio as a character is the ideological antithesis to Joe. Someone who relies so heavily not on his own ability cannot be authentic. Something that Joe spends the entire 13 episodes seeking. While the fights in Megalobox isn't the flashiest, they succeed in being thematic and ideological clashes that makes the narrative engaging. Throughout Joe's search for authenticity in this season of Megalobox, I found an authentic anime. When so much anime that comes out now is mediocre cash grabs, it can be challenging to find something that actually has meaning, that resonates, and that shows love and tribute to the things that came before to create something new and actually enjoyable. Especially when we get to Season 2, but that conversation is not being had until next year. Megalobox is an anime that I would call the real deal.